Hello one, hello all. It's the gothiest ghost of them all, Casper in the flesh. And this review is mostly in regards to addressing an issue. This is an album review, yes, but it's also reviewing an album that brings attention to very serious subject matter, a subject matter that must be addressed. It's certainly a review with purpose. This is an album with purpose, and the purpose is heavy, very serious, very important, and it's from legendary Canadian post-rock band Godspeed Black Emperor, with no title as of February 2024. And if you're unaware, this is pertaining to the civilian casualties in Gaza right now, one of the most horrific events, moments of history that have happened throughout time, which is an ongoing genocide right now in Gaza. And even though this has been marked as one of the highest, and this estimate has been marked on this date, given how this was months ago, it is still ongoing right now. And from that day to now, which we are now in December, it has certainly gone up, immensely gone up. And you've certainly heard me mention this before in the Peggy review I did. And make no mistake, now that this fascist piece of shit, Trump, is about to be in office, you can guarantee the process is going to be even worse. And granted, it was terrible under Joe Biden. That's no question there, with how he's been funding and arming this horrific slaughter that had happened, done by none other than Israel's genocidal lunatic, fascist monster, Bibi Netanyahu. So yes, this is a very dark time right now, immensely dark, one of the darkest times in history. This is like another Holocaust right here. So saying all that to say this, although this is the subject matter, I wanted to bring context to the album before I review the album. So let me also bring back catalog to the band at hand here, Godspeed Black Emperor, who I've never reviewed formally, unfortunately, but this is the first time I'm doing it, and this is honestly their most impressive work in quite a while. And I guarantee you, go back, listen to their early discog, because it's fantastic. From their debut, Lift Your Skinny Fists, Yankee, Alleluia, Don't Bend, Ascend. And even though I haven't been in love with their latest output, this time around they're keeping their sonic realm not as experimental. This time they're going with drone, which they've done in the past, but it's more drone, chamber music, Middle Eastern music, and maintaining their post-rock sound. Also, this LP is with new material, newly recorded material, to which shows a differentiation for what they've done in the past. Not saying everything they've done, they've been sitting on for a while, but in terms of like their newer stuff, I would say this is the case. And I feel it's necessary due to the fact that this is addressing an issue, so it sounds more natural, comes off more organic. I feel the unity from the band here. And it hasn't really been a long time since we've heard a release from them. Back in 2021, when they released Jeed States 1, which I thought was a decent release. Now they're back again with this album, and I feel with this going a tragic, ongoing topic, and I feel with the topic at hand being immensely tragic and unfortunately ongoing, and even though there's no lyrics here, this whole project is a album, again, to raise awareness, but also bring a sense of, like a sense of hope, sincerity, and really express where they stand on this. like on the beginning track. That does have a droning start, introduces us to the somber set of guitars, and the guitar lines here are very distorted, but it's also truly gorgeous and beautiful. It's like there's something hopeful or warm about this track, and due to what's going on right now, hopeful and warm is definitely a refresher. And there's certainly a Middle Eastern basking going on here when it comes to the instrumentation with the guitars. It's like the brightness is just searing through the track, as the bright guitar embellishments just coalesce with the trickling double bass. It's like seeing and feeling and hearing a healing sunrise, and the start of a new day, which I feel is great to introduce a record such as this. And things take an immediate dark turn on the following track, Babies in a Thundercloud. And this is part of the record where you feel the desolation, you feel the immense somber feeling, and I feel the winding drones, the brooding guitars really create this feeling of dread. And rightfully so if you've been paying attention to the main number of casualties. It's very melancholic and leads to this heartbreaking, tear-inducing set of weeping strings, with these distorted guitar bits that eerily, like, so chilling. These chilling sets of muffled cries. And the drum rolls, the snares really create this feeling of a journey that never ends. And the second half has this incredibly sad sets of strings, just lamenting over these hazy drones, which does sound very sorrowful. That eventually gives way to these blaring guitar tones, that eventually gives layers to this blaring sets of sounds. I can't necessarily tell if this is a distortion array of horns or guitars. It's kind of hard to tell. That has these ringing arpeggios. And man, the squawking and wailing leads that leads into this triumphant layers of instrumentation really gives it a very anthemic presence, very powerful presence, almost uplifting. Like, it's from the start, and I feel that as it starts building, and it's a feeling that's desired and received. And upon listening to this record more and more, and being a longtime Godspeed fan, I've noticed how they've brought distortion, how they brought noise to bring a feeling of uplift, a very vast wall of sound, a thick wall of sound. But the sound brings a place of motivation. It's not just loud for the sake of being loud. It's not the sake of being abrasive for being abrasive. It really captures a feeling, and that is what I love about Godspeed. Now, don't get me wrong, I do love a good set of distorted tones that bring like rage and adrenaline pumping, yes, but Godspeed, it's just like, there's just so much, it's like Godspeed, there's just so much positivity and power in their loudness. And they do it so masterfully, especially when they sequence a track, when they build a track. They just have so much connection. You hear the development. The parts that are compartmentalized, it's to bring a feeling. It's to bring growth. And they do it very well. But sometimes they'll keep that one piece of sound and incorporate something vastly different, like on Raindrops Cast in Lead. And on that track, it becomes very apparent as it starts with these chirpy bits to incredibly dense guitar leads, bass and drum fills that again knows how to bring beauty through distortion and simultaneously not throw things off. And while I wouldn't say they get vastly experimental here or too heavy on the audio sampling, there are inclusions of audio samples, like of this Palestinian woman, which I assume is speaking on the absolute horrific, horrifying experience she's going through, her and her people and the people of Gaza are going through, especially given the very descriptive title. And the string sections on the back end are immensely heartening and brings a sound of Middle Eastern folk to the mix that eventually develops into these driving differentiations of guitars that remind me of Velvet Underground, as the track ends off with these wailing, fuzzy guitar tones and pounding drums that create a thick wall of sound. Also, as I mentioned before on their Bandcamp page, this is to raise awareness of the ongoing slaughter and true horror story that they are living in. The true horror story that needs to fucking end. And with Godspeed being one of those political bands, without any lyrics, any words, I feel sonically in the title it's very clear what their message is. And I truly hope this message doesn't land on deaf ears, or the message they wrote to introduce this album doesn't fall on blind eyes. Also, you could tell with the passion in their playing, the clip they used. I feel they have a lot to say. They do have a lot to say, and they're saying a lot without physically saying anything. There are parts here where the drones are very distorted, the guitars are assembled with these crashing cymbals, and it can give you somewhat of a breather. But you feel the culmination of the disembodied strings and the detuned guitars and pounding drums that leads into the cinematic sweltering swells of instrumentation, and the second half gets very forlorn, but then gets introduced to these entrancing Middle Eastern melodies. It's not as gargantuan as the other tracks, but I do enjoy the unconventional surprises I get from it. And the closer, gray rubble green shots, that has these black metal adjacent guitar arpeggios that kind of sounds goth in a way, and they're hit with, again, either these horns or guitars, but they're very distorted, they're very compressed, with these movie-like string sections, with elevation in these spots that are so large. And then we get this absolutely awe-inspiring anthemic horns, or again, guitar lines, that feel very moving, almost tear-inducing. And while this is not a visceral track, I feel it shows a much intensity through its emotions, very emotional devastation here, especially with the atmospheric break, with its dissipating drones and weepy strings and watery guitar lines that are very tripped out, that sounds like they're doubling on impact. And I feel it adds a very finality aspect to the record. And I feel due to the premise here, due to the concept at hand and the message, there needs to be a juxtaposition, because there needs to be beauty here. There needs to be something that separates the trauma and adds an uplift here, something hopeful, especially due to the death count and egregious numbers that are still going on due to fascism, imperialism, and ethnic cleansing. This is truly an important record, truly something that touches on an important message. So while it is important, a horrific topic, and while I did find parts of this album, well, a majority of this album beautiful, sonically very well done, very moving, gorgeous playing of instrumentation for a very ugly situation, probably the most horrifying, ugliest situation humanity has ever dealt with, has ever experienced in a very long time. And this is addressing a very abhorrent situation. I feel like I really can't give this thing a rating. I think the playing here is incredible. And this is honestly Godspeed's best album in a very, very long time, since Alleluia. So you may be asking yourself, what was the point of me doing this? And honestly, this was done because I feel this is a great way of addressing such a horrific situation. So a rating for me doesn't matter. What matters is you're aware of this situation, the severity, this needs to end. We need a ceasefire now. We need to stop funding and arming a genocide. Stop funding Israel. Stop arming them. We need that. And the point of this, not to get a rating from me, is to put you onto this album that is addressing what's going on. And that's it. That's the reason why I did this review. So, Caspa, Godspeed, Free Palestine, Ceasefire Now. Till we meet again.